Oh, wait. Welcome to Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we are so excited to be joined today by Steve Trover, CEO of Better Talent and a true industry veteran with so many awesome stories and interesting stories to tell. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So Steve, why don't you tell us about your, your history, what got you to this moment in your life? How did you get to vacation rentals and your experience thus far?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm kind of the serial entrepreneur. Started my first business when I was 17 years old, but and back in 1997, started a vacation rental company here in Central Florida and ran that for about 20 years. Had 350 properties at peak and about 100 employees on the team. Also had a development company. So we would design, spec, and build purpose-built vacation homes. It was called purpose-built. And we had an interior design company. So we would furnish those properties and furnished about 500 homes over about a 17-year period of that company. And also got into the technology side of the business, developing a proprietary software platform for our company, which ultimately became LiveRez. And I was the chief strategy officer for that company for a while, and then got real involved with the trade associations. And for 5 years, I was vice president and president of VRMA. So just kind of lots of different components of the industry. More recently, launched Better Talent, and that we're really focused on the people side of the business today and helping primarily short-term rental or vacation rental companies hire people for their team.
Wow. So you've been around for quite a while, right? So what was the year that you actually started your company in Orlando?
1997.
97. Okay. Wow. In a nutshell, how much have you seen the industry change since those early days? I mean, both from your perspective as an operator and a VRMA member.
Well, what was interesting in 97, we started really as a marketing company more so than a management company. And we were essentially people's web presence, other management companies. So that's how, early stage we were as far as the development of the industry. The internet was hardly a thing, right? And so, in fact, Google didn't even really exist in 1997, just to give an idea of how early that was. So much has changed. And back then it went from literally classified advertising and magazine advertising all the way to everything we see today. So tectonic shifts in the entire industry and every component of it, from operations to marketing to product. I mean, every piece of it. Early on, our biggest challenge really was just awareness. People not necessarily thinking about staying in a vacation rental as a top of mind option, and that's obviously not the case today. So that's gone. So that's an exciting change, and there's been just a tremendous amount of really great changes over the years. So.
Yeah, interesting. And you touched on newspaper ads and traditional marketing. I know I started at Condo World in 2008. And when I was brought on, our CEO, Roy, who passed away recently, he had been doing all the marketing for the company. And that's what they used to do back in the day. I mean, his job as CEO/marketing director was literally writing newspaper ad copy. And I mean, the most involved part of it was probably, picking out pictures for the brochure, which we still do a brochure, but, there was no digital components or channel management or distribution or any of the crazy things that we do these days. But it's funny when you talk to people that are new to the industry, because it's like, that it just seems like the dark ages, but it really wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
It sure wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the days of just sitting down and going through like every, winter, what was your next brochure going to look like for the following year?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was the cover going to be? How were you going to feature different properties? And I was on our chamber, and kind of similar to what you're doing now, Alex. And we handled the visitor's guide for the market. And the visitor's guide was just the Bible to the destination.
Yeah.
And again, it was nothing was digital. Everything was print. So it took 6-7 months to get this all put together, to sell the ads, to get everybody's advertising and have photo shoots and do all these things. And it just seems like now we can throw it out there in the ether in, same day. So it's definitely, the industry has evolved. Steve, I wanted to ask you, so you said you started out with your management company in Orlando, and I think you had some really interesting experiences there. And I think Orlando was kind of, for me living in Florida, Orlando was like the first big market that sort of blew up. Now vacation rentals I'm in Panama City Beach. They had been here for a long time, smaller aspects of it, but Orlando really, really blew up kind of when you were there. And so maybe you could take us back to how that sort of all transpired and how your business evolved and related into that.
Yeah, Orlando's a really unique market when you look at all of the markets, in the sense that it was really started by the British, and I call it British Invasion 2.0, right? So they came and they would buy what they would call a holiday home in Orlando. And back in the 80s and 90s, they were buying them up in droves for $100,000 for a house with a pool, right?
Wow.
Which was basically a broom closet in London back then. So it seemed like they could get something really inexpensively. They then would need a management company. And so they would identify somebody to take care of and maintain the property. And that happens so much, to the tune of 20,000 plus units of inventory that were bought and put into short-term rentals, that a lot of companies started to evolve. And a lot of the British people that owned vacation homes would come over and start a small management company because they wanted to live here. And so consequently, there's probably in excess of 500 management companies in the Central Florida market alone. So it's one of the more competitive markets as it pertains to just sheer number of companies. What it makes it unique is that they don't generally sell, because most of those companies are owned by people on an E2 visa, which requires them to maintain that company to keep their visa status. And there's no green card pathway to a green card. So it's a really strange market from that perspective. When I started, in my first kind of office that I got in a commercial center, we actually had 7 vacation rental companies and 1 commercial plaza. I had one 2 doors to my left and 1 2 doors to my right. And so you want to talk about competition, it was pretty crazy in that respect. That said, not very many of them scaled. So a lot of them would have like 25, 35, 45 properties, that type of thing. And we did. And so we were able to do things that the other companies weren't able to do, from a service perspective, from a marketing perspective, and really excel. So, but it was a tough place to kind of cut your teeth, if you will. So
there's so much competition there too, not just on the vacation rental side, but I mean, you're competing with the timeshares and, the biggest ones down there, and the traditional resorts and hotels. So Orlando is definitely one of the more complicated markets to get into, as far as I can tell.
There's 120,000 hotel rooms and more timeshare inventory than anywhere else on the planet. So
Wow.
yeah, the collective there's more lodging here than anywhere.
Yeah,
So.
unbelievable. Now, I know I'd like to unpack your proprietary tech a little bit, because I think that's super interesting, and how that turned into LiveRez. How did that start? I mean, did you guys start with a different software, and then you realized the need for something that was more specific?
It was even more fundamental than that. We didn't have software. Because again, it was so early stage that we really just built a website first, and we built that with a development company out of Idaho that had a listing site. And so we developed a CMS, content management system, and then pretty quickly thereafter, right around 2000-ish, started looking at the idea of having a booking engine. So developed an online booking engine. And from there, it was like, okay, now that we're managing properties, we need all the other components. So let's get a housekeeping management component and maintenance and all the different pieces. And it really was, we literally didn't even have a name for it. We called it admin because it was just a system for us, right?
Yeah,
And then one day we looked up and it was a software platform. And so that was launched. It was based in Boise, Idaho, and still is today. It's owned by Inhabit IQ, obviously. But that was kind of the start of LiveRez, was just us kind of building this thing, knowing that we wanted something to run the business. And back then there wasn't. Nowadays, everything is a SaaS platform. Then it wasn't. It was all installed software on your computer, and you paid a large sum of money per year to maintain that software. And So this was really one of, if not the first SaaS platforms, truly SaaS platforms in the vacation rental space.
Wow.
And the reason why we went that direction was really just kind of out of ignorance and not knowing any better, but also looking at the software that was out there and just not being real impressed with it at the time. So, because we really wanted to be an internet-based company, and those software platforms just didn't allow for it. So,
Well, I got to give you credit, and also a plug to LiveRez. We recently did a demo, and you can tell the software that has been built with the fundamentals of being built by somebody that knows what the software is supposed to do and actual use cases of it. That's probably one of the the biggest things we noticed walking around the vendor hall at VRMA. There's a lot of great software that's out there, but it might be new and shiny, but it doesn't really answer or speak to the use cases of the operators that are using it, and not just the property managers, the reservation agents. And I think that's such a different thing for, a lot of these startup companies. They don't have reservation agents that are answering phones. I mean, they're doing
right.
everything just through email communication for Vrbo and Airbnb. And our market, where we are in North Myrtle Beach, and same with Annie in Panama City, and we're in very established markets that companies have been around for 25, 35, 45 years. And it's there's a different need and a different understanding. I think somewhere in the middle is probably where we all need to be, in terms of having the most up-to-date tech, but that it's also built on that still foundation of where the industry really finds that sweet spot.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting seeing the companies evolve today that are the new startups that don't have reservations agents, and knowing that even though, yeah, you can definitely run without it, when you run with it, you actually can convert at a higher clip and
Yeah.
more than likely raise RevPAR and ADR because of it. So, and I think a lot of them push back against it because of the cost, obviously, associated with those employees. But some people still want to talk to people on the phone, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
absolutely.
So you built the software, and when did you transition, or when did the purpose-built homes come into play?
Yeah, so Orlando, another unique thing about Orlando is most of the inventory is production homes. So big box home builders like Lennar, Pulte, and such build communities here. And there's actually zoning allowing for it. And so there's short-term rental communities. The whole community is the development is a vacation rental community. And what was that was the great part, right? Because you didn't have some of the challenges you have where you have it intermingled and with residential homes, and there were resort communities and whatnot. But the challenge we were having is we wanted bigger homes, and so we wanted 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bedroom homes. And so the big box retail shops would build that for us, but they would just add bedrooms. And so what you had consequently was a 4-bedroom floor plan that now is a 7-bedroom, but still has the same dining and living space. And it really wasn't optimized at all. And so we could only get them to stretch so far inside their envelope, if you will, from a building perspective. And so right around the time that no one was building anything in 2009, we built the first purpose-built vacation home. And so we hired architectural, we designed it from the ground up using an R&D process. And so we looked at all of our data from post-stay surveys. We actually did focus groups with guests. We did internal focus groups with our operations team to really design the product from the ground up, specifically focused on being a vacation rental. And obviously this is done in other markets and whatnot, but in most cases, in fact, I've never really saw prior to that anybody really doing a full like R&D process. And if you think about most products, there's an R&D process, but in vacation rentals, we take, generally speaking, residential homes and kind of convert that into a vacation rental. And so it's not optimal. And so that was the kind of the premise behind purpose built. But then we took it a step further and went in, and had been doing interior design for some time. So we really hired draftsmen on staff. So we had a draftsman, we had an architect, and we would design them ourselves. And then we continued to build those in a resort called Reunion here. We built 25 from probably about $1.2 to $3 million homes. They're fairly high end, especially for this market. Homes from 7-bedroom to 14-bedroom in size. So they were big multi-generational travelers, home theater, game room, we had all these core attributes that we would pull in, and they just performed exceptionally well. They were really designed for that purpose as well, just to drive as much revenue as possible for the investor. And so unlike a lot of homes where they're kind of an offset of the expense, we really wanted these to be high performance from a cap rate perspective, like you would, and with the intent of ultimately creating a new asset class. And we're starting to see that happen. So, and we held the purpose-built vacation homes trademark for a lot of years, and now I hear people using that term all the time. So it's kind of cool hearing that out in the industry. So
that's really fascinating. And so did you see, so people are using that name, do you think, are they using that same premise and model to build those homes, or do you think they're just using the name and pretending?
I think the intention is there, and I think some are doing it better than others, and perhaps some are doing it better than we did, right? Because everything kind of evolves. So, but I think that when they say that, they mean it is specifically designed. It wasn't just taking an existing home or floor plan type. And one of the things that we noticed the biggest was how much floor plans matter, and they really do. And having a bathroom for every bedroom, and enough seating area in the dining room for everybody to sit down at the table, and just seemingly small things like that. Things like you don't need big walk-in closets in a vacation rental for obvious reasons, but you so often see it. So we would optimize the footprint to drive the best return possible. But so I see some of that happening, and I know there's specific individuals, and we even we do some consulting on that today with some of our clients. And so I do see some groups that are doing a really good job at it. So
yeah, that's really fascinating. And again, Orlando is just it's an amazing market. I have a couple of partners in the Orlando market, and obviously COVID just decimated Orlando. It's just, and it's still trying to recover, but I think now that the borders are open, they'll start to see a better growth rate like the rest of the vacation rental world.
Yeah, I mean, Florida as a whole has done really well through COVID, but Orlando struggled because obviously the theme parks are the driver here. So that's the kind of the thing that drives visitation, and they were restricting, and still to some degree restrict visitation as far as the numbers. We're not at full capacity as of yet, but I've talked to several people in the market, and they're doing really well now. So, but it did take longer. Hawaii and Orlando probably got hit the worst relative to everybody else. So
yeah, and as a destination that relies so heavily on tourism, we're constantly in our area trying to diversify our economy for that reason. There's a lot of challenges when you're really focused on one entity like that, and a lot of great things and a lot of growth, and very strong economy. But at the same time, COVID definitely flipped everybody, the switch on everybody, to show how dangerous that can be. But it can be difficult to diversify a very, tourist driven economy, because it's just, the area just doesn't cater to outside companies that would, make business home there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that was 2009 that you started doing the purpose-built homes. What happened next? Now, I know at some point you started going into other markets, but did you also, how did the recession hurt the business? Was that an issue?
Yeah, it really, amazingly, it was not. We did have a real estate company, and like everybody else, real estate certainly slowed down, but that's when we shifted to more purpose-built with investors. And so we were selling a lot of real estate from that perspective, the real estate that we were building.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't too big of a challenge. 2009 was a slightly soft year for us, but relative to my builder and real estate focused friends, we did quite well, because a lot of them went out of business, obviously, when everything cratered like it did. But 2010 on were record years. So 10, 11, 12, I mean, we just crushed it through the recession, because, and I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Peter Yesowich, but USA Today will bring him in to talk about travel as an example. But he always said that Americans consider travel a birthright. No matter what's happening in the economy, we'll still go. We might put it on a credit card. We might change our, the type of trip that we take. And that's what we saw through the recession. So is that travel still happened, and people still went to Disney World and all of that. Well, simultaneous to all that, we were going into other markets. So we went into Captiva Island, Florida, just because so many of our guests would come year after year, and then the kids would get to a certain age where they didn't want to come to Disney anymore. So we started asking them where they wanted to go, and they wanted to go to the beach, obviously. And so we picked Captiva because it was kind of a high-end vacation rental island. And then we ended up acquiring a company out in Southern California and the San Diego market. So we were there as well. And then we started picking up some homes in the Sun Valley market in Idaho as well. So we were in 4 different markets, and it was we stretched quite a bit to be able to do that. California was a big stretch, obviously, just from a logistics perspective. We were centralizing like a lot do, kind of reservations, marketing, accounting, some components of guest services. So most of our boots on the ground in those locations are just housekeeping and maintenance related activities. So
were you still using your own proprietary tech at this point too?
Yeah, in fact, we used it up until the point at which we finished when I sold the businesses. We were still using that tech.
Yeah.
We kind of migrated over to LiveRez proper, I think probably the last couple of years of the business, but still use some of the stuff that we had developed.
So after that, I believe one of the things that you were telling us about was you had a big vision for what you thought could be in the market, and kind of how that came to be and then didn't come to be. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, certainly. So, we like I said, we were building a number of homes, and we really looked at those homes as kind of our MVP, right? We were trying to develop out a product, and the intent was to create a new asset class where institutional investors would invest in vacation rentals as opposed to individuals, so that we could scale. And we put together a private equity fund. We did one deal where we bought some land from Disney, and unfortunately the contractor and the land partner got into a legal fight, and that didn't work out. Then we went into contract on another parcel, and simultaneous to all of this, I had been bringing Disney out and meeting with Disney executives to kind of look at what we were doing, because I always wanted them to build on Disney property, right? And so we were developing out a big parcel. It was 210 acres on the west side of Disney. And Disney came to us and said, hey, we're interested in doing this now. And I went to our investors, let them know about it. And then Disney 6 months later changed their mind. And so I was so excited to let everybody know about it in the investment group. They were kind of focused on that. And so we ended up not doing the big project that we were going to do. And because of that, I ended up having to sell the companies. And so I sold all 4 groups, of the companies: the management company, development company, real estate company, and the interior design company. Had a new partner in there for about a year, and then they departed, and I actually had to wind down those companies and sell off all the inventory. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was a lesson learned in the sense that I got really, really aggressive in growth. And so now when I talk to a lot of people I consult with, we kind of stage the growth and are more careful. And I try to help educate them on kind of the potholes, if you will, in business that I saw. But we did some really great things. I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish. And I use it today to help others.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, it was unfortunately that ending came down the way that it did, but at the same time, it was companies like yours that got the industry to where we are now. So, and that experience that you learned then is now what's helping new companies be able to grow and like you said, learn from those mistakes. But it's an amazing story, and Annie and I, when we started this podcast, that was one thing that we wanted to make sure we had an emphasis on, was that we don't just want to tell the stories about what worked. We want to tell the stories of what didn't work. Because right now, especially, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I mean, the current M&A and investment environment in vacation rentals is just so outrageous. And I don't think anybody ever thought it would get to this point that it is, but there is a bubble, and there is certainly, at some point you have to be profitable, and, like you said, cash is king. And if you don't have it, the king has lost the throne. So
right.
I think it's important to tell those stories. I really think it is. And I think we can learn a lot. And Annie and I respect you so much for being open to tell that story, because I'm sure there was a lot of heartache and distress among you and your family and staff. And I know you did everything possible to keep that going for as long as you could. So we appreciate you being open to tell the story.
No, absolutely. No, I look at failure as, fail forward, right? And
Right.
so sure, there was heartache, there was challenges that came out of it, but you learn along the way, and you take that and move forward and try to, do better yourself, but also help others. And that's always been, our focus. And our company, we used to invite companies from all over the country to tour with us, and I called it cross consulting, because I would learn from them and they would learn from us, and I really enjoyed that. And so we still do some of those things today, armed with the knowledge of what we did well and what we didn't do so well, right? And so everybody fails. Not everybody likes to talk about it, but we all
And it's
we all
not
have challenges.
it's
So.
not as easy as it seems. I mean, going from one destination to another, Condo World has expanded through partnerships in other areas, but even doing that, it has not been an easy journey, and we're still on that path to get further outside of our region in this area. But there's definitely a lot of complexities, and it can seem like it's easier than it is because of technology. But you get into certain markets, and it's like the dynamics are just, they can really work against you if you're not from there, if you don't have the connections that are there to lead you down the right paths, to meet the right people, to make the right decisions. It's not as easy as it seems. And I think people look at like Vacasa and some of these bigger organizations, that they're just popping up new locations everywhere, but the way they're operating is not the way that your business or our businesses could operate on a trying to grow scale basis. So it's a different ball game, you could say.
Yeah, I mean, when we went to Captiva, for example, we were so dominant in Orlando that we kind of felt like we could just roll into town and throw our shingle up and really grow fast. And that wasn't the case. It was a challenge. It was a tight market, and so we learned through that. When we went to San Diego, completely different market, very different market dynamics, and the product and getting the product was different than how we were doing in Orlando. So yeah, I mean, each one of the markets have unique challenges, and you have to understand it and really learn those challenges. And for these aggregators, if you will, so the Vacasas of the world, them being obviously the 800-pound gorilla, it's going to be a challenge, and it already is, and we're seeing it. I hope, quite frankly, I hope they figure it out. And why I say that is I feel like there's a place for those players, just like there is in the restaurant business, local restaurants that we all love to go and find that local restaurant. But sometimes you just go to a chain because you know what to expect. And I think we're going to see that in our industry over time as this thing evolves. And whether Vacasa is super successful or another player is, or multiple are, I don't think that will necessarily be a bad thing. I think everybody is concerned about them. If I was still an operator today, I would not be concerned about what they are doing, because I would just be the best local restaurant, if you will, in that market. And so that would be my focus, is have that local flavor, really show that the market better than anybody else. And I think you'll do really well in those markets. But I do think it's important that, even though we've had failures in the past, I mean, Resort Quest obviously didn't do all as well as they had hoped. And I think Vacasa, I think it's important them and others start to become successful, and at least providing a baseline of guest services and owner services that is good for the industry overall. Because, again, bad experiences are the worst thing that happens to our industry, no matter who provides that experience. Because if you come and you stay in a vacation rental for the first time and you hate it, you may just say, you know what, I'm just going to go back to hotels. And so I've always felt that it was really important that all the operators, large and small, do a good job so that this industry can continue to evolve and excel.
And I think that the good thing, again, to your point about the Vacasas of the world, is that, people were hesitant about them coming into market, and they kind of rolled into, I know they rolled it into the panhandle with, again, we're the big Vacasa, we're going to take over, we're going to do all this. But I think what it made people do was take a hard look at how they were operating their businesses, and maybe what their marketing prowess was within the market, and it wasn't as good as they thought it was. So it made everybody step up their game. So it sets a baseline for everybody to kind of operate from that is good. And for that, we do need them to be successful so that it's not a black mark on the industry, because let's face it, going to the, the point of all the M&A and the money that's in it, we're under a very big spotlight right now, and it's ours to make or break. And if we can unite and have good messaging and professionalism within the industry, I know that's a hot topic for everybody. It's important for us to root them on. And I think that kind of dovetails or spills over into, you were head of VRMA, the VRMA, the Vacation Rental Management Association, the president and vice president for a couple of years, and very active and engaged in trying to move the industry forward. And so I think you've got a really good, interesting story. And it was one I didn't know much about, was the switch program that you worked on. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so right about the time I joined the VRMA on the board, it was very clear that there was a threat to the industry, and that threat was, aggregators. At that point, Airbnb wasn't even really a big player. It was HomeAway, and HomeAway had just rolled up all of my favorite listing sites, Cyber Rentals, Great Rentals, et al. And we were concerned about it because we thought that they would do what they frankly did, and that is make it to where you almost have to list with them depending on the market. That is the case today, right? And so my biggest concern was not just that you'd have to list with them or how much it was going to cost. It was the brand of the individual local management companies. And I got the opportunity to go to Focusrite years ago, and Choice Hotels had just pulled their inventory off of Expedia. And so there was this big fight, and they did that because Expedia was wanting last room availability. They were, kind of charging a pretty high margin. I think it was 25%. And Choice Hotels has said, you know what, we're going to pull all our inventory. Well, Expedia had so much power that there was basically a hotel owner revolt, and they were really upset because revenue went way down, and the CEO had to put the inventory back on Expedia. And I saw this happen, and I went, oh my gosh, if that can happen to Choice Hotels, what are they going to do to my company or any of the other members of the VRMA? And when this becomes a significant thing. And so we saw HomeAway as becoming the Expedia of the vacation rental industry. Well, ironically, they literally are Expedia today.
Yeah.
So
Funny how that happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're like, we used to say that they're going to be come just like Expedia, and then they are Expedia. So,
Yeah.
and not that I view necessarily, OTAs as a bad thing either, but the big concern was, again, the stripping of the brand, rate parity, all the things that, we know are ultimately going to happen, some of which already have. And so we set out on this project with the VRMA to build what we called the vacation rental switch. And we put out an RFP, and we invited technology companies to submit to that RFP a proposal to build this thing that was essentially like the MLSs in the real estate industry, so that all of the PMS platforms would connect to it, and distribution would happen through that central switch, which exists in some respects in the, rental cars, airlines, hotels, and so on. And we ended up picking a company called Pegasus. Pegasus actually powers a significant portion of travel and other sectors, like the ones I just mentioned. And so, and the idea was we would put some rules in place, right? So if you wanted the inventory that came through it, you would have the brand of that particular company front and center right alongside of the property. There was, different things as far as terms and conditions, and then the way things were described, and so on and so forth. And it wasn't at all to try and control, the whole industry or anything like that. It was really to protect our members and protect industry players on the PM side from some of these things happening. And so it was a 5-year long stretch. I was vice president for 3 years and president for 2. That we put a ton of work into, traveled all over the country, met with all the PMS platforms at the time. During that time, HomeAway ended up buying instant software and Escapia, which made it really challenging. They didn't like the switch too much for obvious reasons. So from a competitive threat perspective, I think that probably helped push them to do that. And so that became a challenge. And then Pegasus ended up replacing their executive team, and the new CEO called me one day and said, we're not going to build it. And essentially we're just not. And so that ended up killing the project, sadly. But I think the effort was good and the intentions were good. We did get HomeAway, for example, and then Airbnb to agree to put the brand next to the property. And so we were able to do some of those things that were positives, I think, and maybe prolong the concerns that we had to some degree. But we're seeing them, what we were concerned about happened, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Without a question. So, and I know Annie used to work for Expedia, so probably at that time when we were doing it. So
yeah, so it's funny because when I was at Expedia, I had come from the management side of things. So I was in the vacation rental management, and the one thing that I told them was that there's, I always joked that I had this list of 200 plus things that you don't know about vacation rentals. And so the director that hired me at the time, after about a year, she said to me, well, how are we doing? And I'm like, well, we're down to about 150 things you still don't know about vacation rentals. And I had the really good fortune to be kind of in conversations internally about vacation rentals. And I remember being on a call with Dara when he was president at Expedia. And they were saying, well, tell us about HomeAway. What is this VRBO company? What do they do? And I'm like, how could you not know? Like, there was just something so tone deaf about the industry. But that, education within Expedia, there was still a lot of that had to go on. But having come from the rental side of things, we were very much a proponent of having our name, our brand within our listings. And so we fought with Expedia about that because they said, no, you can only list the name of the building. Well, the problem for me was, as a management company, I was in a building that had 15 different management groups. I needed to be able to stand out. So that was something that I think Expedia finally adopted. And I think you were doing the same thing. And so fast forward, in 2015, they bought HomeAway. And I remember my internal messaging going crazy that day when they announced it. And they're like, did you know that this was happening? I was like, yeah, Dara and Barry Diller had me up for dinner and asked my opinion. And I was like, of course I didn't know, this is the greatest thing ever. But it's just amazing how you could go from not understanding anything about the industry to buying the biggest part of the industry. Right. That was, again, it was a difficult thing for management groups because it had decimated management, portfolios, because owners were going direct to the VRBO listings and things like that. But it was the enemy that you had to keep close. You just had to be involved with it. So I applaud that. And like I said, I just had no idea about the switch. But again, I was at Expedia, so I probably would have been blinded to whatever was going on with that. So
yeah, understandably, of course.
Yeah.
That was such an unbelievable time. And actually, I do remember that time. That's right about when I got into vacation rentals and started working at Condo World. And the reason I was hired at Condo World was actually for a similar reason as the switch, but it was more, our owner was more concerned about rent by owners becoming a major threat for the industry. And not just for our company here, but he saw it as his kind of moral obligation that he was like, we've got to save vacation rentals, the professionally managed side. And so we put together a website that specifically spoke to why you would rent from a professionally managed company. But that when we heard about the switch, I'll never forget the first VRMA conference I went to was hosted in Myrtle Beach, and we heard about it. And him and I looked at each other and we're like, this sounds like the same premise of where we're going with things. And, the branding part of it totally hit home with us. And then, as we started kind of watching how this went, I mean, Steve, you guys were back then, you were a visionary in my mind for what you saw as eventually becoming the problem. Because when you think about it, and Annie, you work in channel management. So this is, there's a lot of ways we can unpack this, but there still is no one centralized distribution way for vacation rentals. And that is a major problem. And probably one of the biggest issues we all face is API connectivity. I mean, everybody is at a point where everybody wants to work together. The closed systems, for the most part, have gone away or are going away. But, connecting the dots there is still a major problem for a lot of companies. So, I think you guys saw the writing on the wall there from a brand perspective, from a rent by owner perspective, and being able to control the inventory and to be able to sell the product. And, when you look at properties that are, I think the switch obviously must have had some operators on there that were true condo type operators, because Annie, like you said, in Panama City, same way as in Myrtle Beach, there can be 15 managers in one building. And, you can't just put the name of the building on there. I mean, it is super important to have the brand of the company. And ultimately that was part of how OPMA, which is On-Site Property Managers Association, was formed. That's where Annie and I first met, was through that group. And, for that same reason, that, just because you're the on-site resort, but an individual owner at that property is not guaranteed to offer the same level of accommodations as booking through, the on-site. So the same issues are still prevailing, but it's really interesting to hear that you and your team at that point on VRMA saw that coming, tried your best to make it happen. Unfortunately, it didn't, but and same with your other company. I mean, you were a visionary too on the the purpose-built homes and where that went. And I think if you had done that now, it would probably be a different outcome, right? So it's interesting to look back on that decade of change within the industry, because it's, like I said, those things had to happen to get all of us to where we are now, I think.
Amy Hynod always jokes that I'm just going to watch what you're doing now and do it in like 10 years. And
Yeah. Well, yeah,
watch you fail, then I'll do it.
Yeah. Oh no.
That's a great next question, actually, too. So what would be where do you see the future of the industry in 10 years? And what's an idea that you want to do right now that we should wait and do in 10 years?
I'm not telling anybody.
Oh, darn it. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, well, and obviously, where I've landed. And so, I worked on the product side, worked on the distribution side, worked on the tech side, all of those management. And what I realized more recently is I looked at it and I said, okay, done all these different things. Should I just leave the industry altogether? No, I love it. And I love the people. And, so stuck it out from that perspective, but also said, what is the biggest problem for our industry? Is it, distribution? Is it tech? Is it those things? And those are all super important, right? But if you think about, if you had the best technology and you had the best properties in a market, but you didn't have the best team, you're still not going to win. So that's why what led me to really focus on what we're focusing on now, which is helping people find the right people for the right seats. And I'd done a number of, worked really hard, like we all do, to try and figure that piece out in my businesses. And so today that's all we do. And so just really trying to address the piece that I hadn't really dove into other than just hiring for my own companies. And so we're excited about getting better and better at that every single day, and helping the industry in that regard. So
it's definitely needed. And, we were just on a call earlier with Simon Lehman. He's got a great line about it, that before capital comes human capital. And I'm sure you would agree with that. And,
Absolutely.
we touched on it earlier too, that a lot of these newer companies, they don't see necessarily the need, or they can't justify the cost of having reservation agents and this and that, when they think that it can all just rely on the technology. And technology helps 100%, and it does allow you to operate on a more lean basis. But at the same time, the people that are behind the brand and driving the car are ultimately the reason for your success.
Unequivocally, and until robot cleaners and robot maintenance people show up, we're going to have people. Yes, we theoretically can operate leaner because of tech today, and a lot of these, especially the new startups, do. But this industry will always have people in it. It just will. And so when I look at the market leaders in any market anywhere in the world in this industry, and I look at the makeup of that company, it's really not the tech stack that gets them to be the leader. It's the people every single time. And the best companies in the best markets, or in the market, it has the best team almost always, right? It's not just because the leader was a great visionary, certainly that matters, right? But that leader needs to be a great leader, and they need to be somebody who leads a great team of people to success. And so that's why we've chosen to focus on this today, and I love it. It's probably my favorite thing that I've done in the industry by far. So,
That's awesome. That's so great to see that you've moved into this new role, and it sounds like your team is doing great stuff. So it's very exciting.
yeah, well, thank you.
So,
Well, we're in an early stage, but we're going to keep running at it. So that's
Yeah.
for sure. So,
we like to wrap up with a couple of questions. But I think that we kind of probably could answer some of the questions that we have about your passion and where that lies. And so I wanted to kind of ask you, with all of the things that you have been through, what inspires you the most to keep going? And again, I think I know the answer to this, but what keeps you involved in this industry?
you know, I asked myself that, I try to be super objective. And like I said earlier, I even thought at one point, so to just go find another industry. And I tell this story. I was once at a vacation rental conference, and I have ADHD, like really bad, like not even joking. And so I was wandering around, and I went and I go, oh, it's lunchtime. And I get in the lunch line, and I start dishing my plate up, and I'm about 2/3 of the way down the line. And I look up and I realize I'm not at the right conference.
Oh my gosh.
It was a big, resort hotel or conference
Right.
hotel and multiple conferences, and I'm at the wrong one. Right. And I'm like, oh, well, forget it. I'm just going to, I'm already dished my plate. So I literally go sit down next to these people, and I don't even remember what industry it was, but I remember thinking these people are boring.
Yeah.
And so what keeps me passionate about this industry is the industry. It's the people. It's how passionate the people in this industry are about this industry. That's what keeps me going. So do I love vacation rentals? Heck yeah. I've stayed in hundreds of them. I have 4 kids. We can't stay in a hotel, right? So
Right.
the product, definitely, I love it. I think it's great. I think what it does for families and for friends and connectivity and all that, I'm passionate about that as well. But what keeps me in this industry is that this industry is really exciting. There's really great people that are super passionate about it. And probably the other thing I would say to that is I still look at it as a big whiteboard. So even though I said, we used to do classified advertising and look at all that's evolved, I think we're still early stage. We're still making stuff up every
definitely.
day in this
Yeah.
industry. And there's so many problems to solve. And, that's what I like to do is look for the biggest problem and go try to solve it. Right. So I like that challenge, and this industry is full of challenges. So,
Well, you're
That
definitely
is-
somebody whose heart is connected to it. And I think that makes inherently a big difference than somebody that's just coming into it because they just see a investment opportunity or a money opportunity. I mean, you've been there for the highs and the lows, and in our industry, obviously the connection just between all of us as industry professionals is really strong. I don't know that this is replicated in all other types of industries. In fact, I know it's not. And that's something that we're lucky to all have together. And I mean, the 3 of us met in person at VRMA just recently, and that was, wonderful to connect, and which led to the podcast today. So we appreciate you, Steve, and everything that you do. And truly, it was wonderful to have you on with us today as one of our very first guests.
it's an absolute honor to be one of your first guests, and I know you guys are going to crush it, and I'm just excited to watch that be the case. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much. And if people are interested in talking with Steve Trover, the man, and working with Better Talent, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, bettertalent.com's the website. Steve@bettertalent.com is my email address, and you can also find me on LinkedIn, obviously. So any of those ways are great.
How long have you had that URL? That's a great domain.
Only a couple of years now. Yeah.
Wow, guys, you would have thought that somebody would have scooped that up like
Oh, they
Yeah,
did. I
15
paid
years
for it.
ago.
Oh,
Oh,
did you?
okay. I was gonna say
It was not cheap.
I mean, that sounds like a major recruiter type of website. But
Yeah.
yeah, you've got a great brand, so you definitely have some really strong legs to stand on in this venture. But
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yeah, no, we love that. Well, what happened?
we lost you there, Steve.
So
There we go.
what's that?
All right.
Oh,
Well,
yeah. Something happened. We lost you.
Oh,
thank you so much again, Steve. And if anybody wants to connect with Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com and follow us on there from LinkedIn, social media. or send us an email. Everything is accessible from the website. So thank you for tuning in. And until the next time, we will chat with you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.